Previously on Starseed Psyche, Kaio Adachi and the Slayer Squadron, as well as every other Super 8th soldier in Japan, are preparing to invade an alleged base of the Q-Seracs. These mysterious mechanical invaders are still widely believed to have been created and sent by the Q-Sidians, who had come to Earth with the intention of helping humanity. But Kaio and his friends have strong suspicions that others are behind the invaders. After Kaio, Toshiko Yamada, Chip Akali, and Feastriel, their Q-Sidian ally, met with a Repsoro scientist, who turned out to be Chip's mother, as he is secretly a disguised Repsoro who is unaware of this fact himself, the group now suspects that humans are behind the Q-Seracs. They believe the Japanese military chief of staff, Shijikaburu, may be in on this as well, with the intent of war with the Q-Seracs pushing human technology forward at a rapid rate. The only problem is human tech is nowhere near advanced enough to have built the Q-Seracs drones and ships. Meanwhile, Kaio also believes he has finally figured out, between Feastriel and Toshiko, which one is the fabled love of his life. He and Toshiko have finally kissed, and done a bit more than that, and have gotten so in sync while training that they can swap control of each other's Super 8th blades mid-battle. Unfortunately, this led Toshiko's mother, General Yamada Ritsu, one of few people who got the experimental Tekagami Claw weapon surgery, to realize that something romantic was going on between the two, and she took her daughter aside to discourage it. Toshiko didn't listen, but General Ritsu may not be done trying. Let's see if she continues to try and get between them in the next chapters of Starseed Psyche. I was in heaven over the next 2 days of training. Toshiko and I kept building our teamwork in combat, and anytime we got a chance to sneak away together, well, we were just getting even closer. Most people in the squad were thrilled about our ability to work so seamlessly together. But not everyone. After that first night that Toshiko and I got frisky out in the woods after training, she told me what General Ritsu had taken her aside to talk about. As I suspected, it was about the fact that there was clearly something going on between Toshiko and me. Ritsu had told her that, for the good of her career, she should not be getting romantically involved with any fellow soldiers, let alone someone she outranked. She didn't trust her daughter to not let that impact her work ethic. There was more to their little chat than that, but that was the general tone of it. All it really did was make Toshiko feel more distant from Ritsu, and have less interest in trying to build a stronger relationship with her. I actually found myself feeling a little bad for Ritsu. Don't get me wrong, I was glad Toshiko wasn't listening to her, but without realizing it, all Ritsu was doing was pushing her daughter farther and farther away. Toshiko may be living her life knowing that in her past life as a Tsuburite she had other parents, but to Ritsu, Toshiko was the only daughter she had. She didn't even have her husband anymore. Of course, I was far too distracted by how incredibly things were going with Toshiko to feel bad about Ritsu for long. I'm not sure if it was out of rebellion, but Toshiko made less and less effort over those next 2 days to hide the fact that she and I were romantically involved. She wouldn't kiss me in front of other soldiers or anything, but lingering hands on my shoulders, extended longing eye contact, and how she spoke to me made it pretty evident to everyone that we were a thing. Nobody else in our squad, or any other squad, ended up figuring out how to blade swap. I mean, it's not like Toshiko and I really knew how we were doing it either. She didn't remember that being a thing Tsuburites could do in her past life. We thought maybe, since Tsuburites didn't have romantic relationships, it was something we could do because of our feelings for each other, but that was nothing more than a loose theory. Everyone else in our squad did step up their game, though. Despite only having a few days to build up our team's connection, we got used to each other's tactics and moves pretty quickly, and started working around each other well. Ritsu seemed to especially step up her game with the Tekagami Claw. There wasn't a running tally of who took out the most holograms in our training sessions, but if there was, she probably would have been in the lead. The cannon that emerged from the top of her claw was a faster ranged weapon than our Super 8th blades, and the more she used the amplified agility and strength granted by her arm and the implants, the more effortless it was for her to use. By day 3, she was outmaneuvering most people on the squad. Astoundingly, she was even withholding herself from giving orders to anyone in our squad. Technically, she was the highest-ranking member of our team, but Captain Hekima was the leader of the Slayers. Normally, a general would never be put in a position to take orders from a captain, but because General Ritsu was one of the few soldiers utilizing the new technology of the claws, the Chief of Staff had wanted her to focus on using it effectively, and not splitting her energy between that and being in charge of others. I was curious how someone with an obsessive urge to respect the chain of command would feel about something like that. If she was bothered by it, though, it seemed like it was taking a back seat to her problems with Toshiko and me. I was grabbing lunch with Toshiko the day before the base invasion when Ritsu marched right up next to us, not even acknowledging her daughter's presence. "Private Adachi, may I have a word with you?" I froze, and Toshiko responded. "What is this in regards to, General?" Barely glancing at Toshiko, she replied, "This does not concern you." Toshiko sneered. "I'll bet it absolutely does concern me." Ritsu's jaw tensed. "I'll remind you to watch your tone when addressing a general, former squad captain Yamada." I can't imagine Toshiko's response was going to be very pleasant, but I finally stepped in. "Yes, General, I can come have a word with you." I turned to Toshiko and gave her a confident, reassuring nod and a smile. It didn't seem to make her feel much better, but she let us go off together. I had to really pick up my feet to keep up with Ritsu. She marched us through a few halls without saying a word until we reached her office. She gestured me in before her, and I stepped into the most organized room I've ever seen. There was a pristinely clean desk with a computer at a perfect 45-degree angle to the straightly aligned chair behind. There were 2 filing cabinets on either side of the back wall, and there was 1 photograph on each. One was a picture of an American military general, Toshiko's late father. The other was a shot of their whole family, when Toshiko was probably 7 years old. Both parents stood stoically, their daughter standing before them. Her father was the only one that had the slightest hint of a smile in the photo. General Ritsu closed the door and gestured for me to sit in the guest chair, closer to the entrance. I did so, and as I did, all my nerves started hitting me at once. Was she going to order me to stop seeing her daughter? Was that a thing she could even do? If I didn't appease her, would she make things harder for Toshiko somehow? I tried to ignore all those thoughts, and thankfully I had enough genuine curiosity about what was about to happen that it blanketed over some of my anxiety. General Ritsu sat down in the chair with perfect, bordering on uncomfortable posture. "Private Adachi, I would like to begin by saying that I have great respect for you as a member of this military. Your dedication to improvement is notable, and despite it having gone awry once the device was brought here, you are the only soldier to have ever acquired a functional piece of Q-Serax technology. I have no doubt your future here will be bright, so long as you don't start making immature mistakes." I knew that end bit was meant as a dig, but I still replied, "Thank you, General." There was a slight pause, then she went on. "Toshiko has already made far more immature mistakes than you have. She refused to share her formula for creating the Super-8 gauntlets, despite being directly ordered to do so. This has not only put her on the Chief of Staff's bad side, but also left the world crippled against the Q-Serax, leaving us with the necessity to find solutions to them elsewhere." She glanced down at her Tekagami claw as she said that. I replied, trying to be as eloquent as possible. With all due respect, regardless of how widely she was willing to share them, the Super-8 gauntlets were a brilliant invention on Captain Yamada's part, and were an unbeaten line of defense against the Q-Serax for almost a year before we required any supplementary weapons to help us further. I feel that deserves more praise than punishment, despite her hesitation to make them available for anyone to build and potentially abuse. I genuinely thought I was going to stumble or stutter somewhere in that sentence, but I got it out like a perfect combo in a video game, then just sat there proudly waiting for her response. Again, there was a pause. Finally, General Yamada said, "Regardless of your opinion on the matter, my daughter's military career is teetering over a canyon as it is. She has essentially made an enemy out of the Chief of Staff and has proven to have a lack of respect for the chain of command. Her being romantically involved with a subordinate, even one with your impressive record, will only dissolve the remaining respect she's acquired in this military even further. I have no issue with you, and in another context would be happy for you to be involved with my daughter, but this is likely to adversely impact your career as well as hers. If she continues to lose the trust and respect of people such as the Chief of Staff, and you are romantically entangled with her, you could end up losing the opportunities that should be coming your way as a result of your work thus far." I could feel my anxiety shifting towards anger. It sort of seemed like she was just trying to throw whatever she could at me to make me reconsider being with Toshiko. I was about ready to just bite back when I remembered my good old emotional maturity rival and thought, what would Faye do here? How would she look at this? I was seeing a threat to the first awesome relationship I'd ever had. Faye would probably see a scared mother, worried about her daughter's future, and maybe even how it would impact her own career. I took a breath. General, I know you've worked very hard to be in the position you're in, and I imagine your career and military status is one of, if not your top priority, but I don't think that's how Toshiko feels. I do think she cares a lot about her work, but I think building a loving relationship with someone is more important to her. I'm not saying that's definitely me, and it does not need to be, she interrupted. A romance with someone outside the military would be far more acceptable and attract less unwanted attention, so long as it didn't interfere with her work. I get that, but Toshiko and I have a lot of shared life experience that makes us a great fit for each other. I know it's early, but neither of us has ever felt this way about someone else. She stood up, leaning forward and pressing her hands on the desk. Petty infatuation is not worth risking the respect of your superiors over. This time, I let a pause linger in the air. Finally, I asked something a bit out of line, but out of genuine curiosity. General, I know this isn't a fair comparison, but if you could bring your husband back by losing the respect of your superiors, would you do it? Without a second of hesitation, she replied, No. Part of me was stunned, but another part had kind of expected that answer. I wasn't sure if she really meant that or was just angry and stubbornly holding her ground. I stood up myself, putting my hands behind my back. General, I have deep respect for your skills as a soldier and the dedication it has taken to rise to the station you're at. But speaking to you, not as a general, instead as the mother of the woman I genuinely hope to spend my life with, I really think you should let Toshiko do what she wants here. Accepting this decision of hers, maybe even just talking to her about why she's making it and what she wants, could even turn this into an opportunity for you two to get closer. If that's something you want, anyway. Another pause. I looked for any flickers of consideration in her face. I thought I saw some, but that may have just been wishful thinking. She broke the silence by saying, What if, as your general, I simply order you to stop seeing my daughter? I was pretty sure that wasn't something she was allowed to do, but regardless, I replied, General, you may be my superior in my career, but when it comes to my role in Toshiko's love life, she outranks you. So as long as she wants me around, I'll be with her. Ritsu just leered at me. Faye probably wouldn't have said something like that, but I didn't care. I felt like I now had all the power in that conversation. The last thing she said was simply, Dismissed. That afternoon, all squads were brought into the hangar for another presentation by the Chief of Staff himself. The Slayer squad was sitting up front, and I was right next to Toshiko. I gave her a brief overview of how the chat with the general had gone, but tried to emphasize that Ritsu was just worried about her. Toshiko could tell I was downplaying what her mother had said and was still pretty frustrated with her. When the presentation started, I imagined Chip and Toshiko were doing the same, but I was definitely watching and listening to Buru closely, looking for any subtle hints that he may in fact be involved in the Q-Serax invasion. We knew he wasn't a Repsoro now, thanks to Dr. Shatya, but he was still a prime suspect. There was a large projector screen behind him, up on the elevated platform, showing drone footage of a cave opening in Chijibu Tanakai National Park. This is one of 4 access points our intelligence has discovered to the cave systems where the mechanical malefactors have carved concealed accommodations for their forces. It is the aperture through which our Slayer squadron will enter, leading the way for our forces to begin the next phase of this war, where humanity shows its fortitude. Scans of the cave systems have provided us a map of the terrain, which you will all have access to. The tunnels lead to several wider rooms where we believe much of their ships and technology are stored. We will take all we can and slaughter anything that raises a finger against us. Your suits will all be outfitted with a camera and microphone, the purpose of which is to gather evidence of the great victory you are about to achieve for our world. We will show the citizens of Japan and Earth as a whole that humanity will not quake under the hoof of an extraterrestrial menace. I couldn't lie, it was a pretty rousing speech, but I really hoped we'd have access to the footage our cameras shot. I wanted to be able to reference it myself and look back through it for any hints or clues as to who made the Q-Seracs and if there was any proof humans were involved. I had checked in with Faye once since our meeting with the Repsoros. She was doing her own investigating and talking to her brother Corleon about what we'd learned, trying to figure out how humanity could have access to technology like the Q-Seracs. When Shijikaburu was done with the core of the presentation, Hekima went up to explain some of the smaller details of things we'd learned from our recon of this base. There had been very little Q-Seracs activity outside those caves, but there had been some footage of a new type of Q-Seracs going in and out, helping prove that the enemy was down there. Hekima said, "This is a new type of drone we're calling the Q-Seracs Brisker. It is by far the fastest Q-Seracs we've seen, and they are extremely maneuverable, even when moving at 120 kilometers per hour. They don't appear to have any projectile weaponry, but do have two small blades protruding from their forearms, which they'll likely use in combat. Everyone will need to watch out for their squad mates and call out if you see one of these drones approaching. We are not looking for minimal casualties on this mission, we are looking for 0 casualties. That may be a tall order, but it's one we must do our best to fill." As he said that, it seemed like his throat tightened. There was the slightest hint of pain in his voice, but it disappeared quickly as he went on. "These Briskers have been seen on very rare occasions scouting the area around the caves, doing a quick circuit of running through the park from one entrance to the next, then disappearing inside. They are very likely part of the warning system this base has in place to spot and alert the other drones to an enemy invasion. If we see any of these on our way in, we must make sure to destroy them, ideally before they see us back. We must also be prepared for any other variety of new drone or weapon, but that's what our training has been all about, so I'm sure you're all ready to face new threats. This mission will require everyone to be on the top of their game, for yourselves, for your fellow soldiers, and for the world watching. Let's give them hope, people." A few more officers had information for us, then we were given the rest of the afternoon to rest and recover from training before the mission the following morning. As much as I wanted to just run off with Toshiko again for some alone time, I realized I hadn't really spoken alone with Hekima since the night the bomb went off in the base. He'd been acting weird that night, and seeing him get ever so briefly choked up in that presentation gave me the urge to check in on him on a more personal level. I saw him leave the hangar after the meeting and tried to run after him. He got out of the doors before I did, and I lost sight of him. I weaved through some of the nearby halls for about 10 minutes and didn't see him. Finally, I turned a corner in time to see him finishing a conversation with General Ritsu. Thankfully, she walked in the opposite direction from where I was, and Hekima started towards me. I walked up alongside him, keeping his pace. "Hey, Captain, how are you feeling about the mission?" He didn't even look at me. "Good. Get some rest, Private Adachi." He was clearly brushing me off, but I wasn't having it. "I think we're ready. The squad is doing really well together, but do we have any plans for where to take any tech we do manage to steal? We obviously can't bring it back here again." "The Chief of Staff has organized an off-site location. Is that all, Private?" Something had to be wrong. Hekima was usually hard to read because of how good an actor he was, but now it just felt like he wasn't bothering to conceal his frustration. I just didn't know where it was coming from. I guess, Captain, but I just wanted to see how you were doing." "How I am doing is I am carrying the weight of leading an invasion with all eyes on me, despite the fact that a year ago my career involved having as few people notice me as possible. The Chief of Staff is counting on me, General Ritsu is counting on me, and every Slayer in our squad and their families is counting on me to make sure we achieve our goal and all come home alive. Unlike last time. So go have a quickie with your new girlfriend if you must, then get some sleep so you're not a mess tomorrow when we need everyone on their A-game." I slowed my pace to not keep up with him anymore. He glanced back, seeing the surprise and confusion on my face from his reaction. I saw sadness and guilt flicker across his face, but he said, I don't have time to be sorry about taking my job seriously right now, Adachi. I've got a meeting with the Chief of Staff, and I can't show any signs of letting him down." He marched off quickly. I almost wanted to chase after him, but I didn't know what else I could say. I figured all I could do for him was be at my best the next day on the mission. Before I could decide where to head off to next, I felt a soft hand rest on my shoulder. I assumed it was Toshiko, but her grip was usually a bit more firm. I turned around, but saw nobody at all. Then a voice very quietly said, "Meet me in the woods at 7 tonight, I have news. Bring Chippensall and Toshiko if you can." I almost instinctively yelled, "What are you doing here, Faye?" But that would have made things worse. Her coming into the base was a huge risk even if she was cloaked and invisible. Whatever she had to tell us must be extremely important. I gave a slight nod and felt the hand slip off my shoulder. I did my best to act casual as I headed off to meet Toshiko. I found her at her bunk, sitting on it upright, doing some slow breathing. There were people coming and going, but nobody else was lingering nearby. Toshiko's expression was a little tense. My guess was she was trying to clear away some frustration with her mother. I sat very gently at the end of her bed, trying to not disturb her, while also hinting at my presence. She felt the bed's weight shift and opened one eye. She smiled and leaned forward, whispering, "Ready for another walk in the woods, Adachi?" My whole body started buzzing, but I knew that would be a strange thing for us to go do right now. "I am, but as much as I can't believe I'm saying this, we might want to hold off on that for now. A friend of ours just told me to get you and Chip and meet her in the woods at 7, so she's probably out there right now and could see us if we go do that." Toshiko processed, nodding slightly, then shrugged. "I mean, it's a big woods. Wouldn't be our fault if we ended up near her and she saw us." I could feel my face slightly flush. "I never took you for an exhibitionist." "I'm not. It's more like I'd be asserting my territory to her. I wouldn't mind making sure she knows you're spoken for," she said, looking me up and down playfully. For a second I thought she may be referring to the whole situation of me not knowing whether she or Faye was the love of my life. There was no way she could know that yet, right? I certainly hadn't told her yet, despite feeling weird about keeping a life-changing event like that a secret, especially considering it directly involved her. She clarified what she meant when she said, "I'm not dumb, Kaio. I'm sure before you and I started getting to know each other more intimately, you must have at least been a little taken with our now mutual friend out there. We've both acknowledged that she is pretty amazing." My instinct was to immediately say no. I wanted to assert that I'd never been remotely interested in Faye. I was pretty close to saying that. But I'd seen enough dramas to know that if I lied, it'd just find a way to come out eventually anyway. So I said, Yeah, I was a little, but nothing happened between us, and more importantly, she isn't you. I chose you, and you're more than pretty amazing." She blushed a bit too. "And my mother isn't going to scare you off?" I hadn't even considered that she'd think that was a possibility. I smirked, then said, "You know, along with being into dance, another, I guess, sort of more stereotypically feminine trait of mine is I really like a good romance story. And what kind of romance story would ours be without at least one disapproving parent, right?" She chuckled, looking calm and reassured. "Does that mean we're gonna have to go through all the other horrible romance tropes? Like some weird miscommunication causing a huge fight, or one of us finding out we're only dating because of a bet, or one of us having some other devastating secret?" And right there I saw my window. I wasn't ready to tell Toshiko about the love of my life and rival handshakes, not by a long shot, but I also didn't want to keep hiding it from her, so I found what I felt like was a sort of fitting middle ground. I said, "Well, I definitely want to avoid most of those, but speaking of secrets, not devastating ones, but I don't know if this is a weird thing to say, but I actually do have a secret that I do really want to tell you, but just not yet. It's just very personal, I guess, and probably weird to tell someone that you just started seeing. It's nothing bad. I mean, honestly, if we do, end up going the distance romantically and I get to a point where I do tell you, I'm pretty sure you'll think it's great and be happy about it. I'm just not ready now. Is that a weird thing to say?" My heart was thudding like crazy. The more I spoke, the more it felt like telling her that was a terrible idea that was just going to make her desperate to know what the secret was. But as I should have expected, her response exceeded my expectations. "That's completely fine, Kaio, and I'm glad you told me that. Having something weighing on you, like that seems like it was from your tone, can pretty easily cause tears in a relationship," she said softly. You're seriously glad, even though I'm not actually telling you what it is yet? You're not, like, desperate to pry it out of me or anything? I asked, still anxious. Of course not. I obviously am curious what it is, but it's like you said, we just started seeing each other. As much as I think, well, I assume you feel the same, that it's going really well so far. I absolutely feel that way, I interjected excitedly. She went on. But that doesn't mean we need to know everything about each other right away. I don't think I have some big specific secret to reveal down the road, but there are still things about me you won't know until we've been together longer too. My racing heart rapidly slowed and calmed. Thanks, Toshiko. I really appreciate that. You're very welcome, Kaio. She smiled warmly, then said, So you gonna let me mark my territory with Faye out there watching or what? I laughed a little too loudly, shifting away from my nerves. I think that'll be a bit weird for me knowing she could be watching, but we can hold hands as we go to meet with her today so she knows I'm off limits. Toshiko rolled her eyes. Fine, but can we go find an isolated closet or something then? I laughed. Your libido is nuts. I mean, I love it, but still. What do you expect? I didn't get to do any of this in my past life. We both laughed, but also realized we were getting a bit too loud talking about pretty secret matters. We ended up going to the room where I usually practice dancing. We kept the lights off and made out in the corner of the room away from the door for a bit. Later, we found Chip, told him about the meeting with Faye, then had dinner with the squad before heading off. We all left the building at slightly scattered times to try and not be suspicious, but all made it out to the spot where we'd last met Faye by 7. She beamed us up onto her cloaked ship. Toshiko's hand was firmly clasped around mine when we got into the ship. Faye was skipping forward to give me a hug first, but then noticed our hands. She pivoted and hugged Chip first instead, but still went through and embraced all of us one by one. Faye showed no sign of irritation, but I couldn't imagine she would have let it show if she was bothered by Toshiko and me being a thing. Besides, now her eyes were lingering longer on Chip than anyone else. Toshiko and I sat on her couch and Chip flopped down onto one of the tie-dye beanbag chairs. She began. With help from my brother, I have managed to get some information that may be useful to us. As it turns out, there was a brief period in Cusidian history around 5,000 years ago when some of our inventors, led by a man named Inovrian, had built machines that they referred to as the Famubanto. They will very likely look familiar to you. A hologram image appeared next to her, showing a being that looked like a synthetic mechanical Cusidian. With a few tweaks to its look, it would have been a dead ringer for a Cusarax drone. The intention was for them to do menial work and essentially be servants, but it was a very short-lived program, as there were many moral and ethical dilemmas raised around them and the level of artificial intelligence they'd be given. Some were even built as weapons prototypes, to be used as possible assets to fight alongside the Suberites as intergalactic peacekeepers. But this too was never brought to fruition. Our people, and those in the Federation, did not trust machines to make life or death decisions. Toshiko stood up and looked closely at the image. When was the last time there was a record of any of these being built? Faye shrugged. Around 5,000 years ago. It truly was a very short-lived program, so much so that I nor my brother had ever heard of it. It does certainly seem, though, that someone has managed to resurrect Inovrian's program in the modern day, or at least found the old discarded drone somehow. We found no record of how Inovrian and his co-workers disposed of these drones after it was deemed they not be used. As much as I've asserted that my own people are innocent, this does heavily suggest that at least some Cusidians are involved in these attacks. I respected how totally willing Faye was to admit that she may have been wrong, but honestly it still didn't feel right to me. I said, I guess that's possible, but not necessarily true. Is there any chance these things just became artificially intelligent enough to give themselves orders? Maybe they were floating around in space for centuries or something and, I don't know, found Earth and decided they had beef with humans for some reason? Technically, I suppose it is possible, but from our records we've uncovered so far, because our people were concerned about them becoming too sentient, Inovrian put safety measures in place to limit how much their intelligence could grow and evolve in an attempt to appease the skeptics. And if they were disposed of in space, The odds of them drifting along until they happened to reach Earth 1 year ago for someone here to activate them would be incredibly unlikely. Chip raised a hand, looking kind of goofy with his massive body laying in the beanbag. Now, because my entire world has been turned upside down several times in the last few days, I feel it ain't a weird thing for me to ask. Is there any way time travel's involved? Like someone brought those things back from the past to now? Is time travel a thing? Doesn't strike me as weirder than learning that lizard people are really a thing, let alone the fact that I am one. Faye rocked her head back and forth. That is a reasonable question, but a complicated one to answer. Technically, by my people's beliefs, and those of most members of the Federation, time is an illusion only perceived by us while our souls take on these physical forms we currently reside in. It should arguably be possible to travel through time as our souls exist in all times simultaneously, but building such technology that would allow our physical forms to travel forwards or backwards in time is discouraged by the Galactic Federation. As far as I'm aware, nobody has achieved this, and doing so simply to bring technology such as this forward from the past strikes me as an odd thing to do with that ability, if it were even possible. Still, we cannot rule anything out at this point. The more I learn, the more questions I have. It is quite the exciting mystery. I wanted you all to know that, while I will be keeping to myself, I intend to go into the Q-Serax base, cloaked, during your infiltration of it tomorrow. The Q-Serax are good enough at detecting my cloaking technology that going in by myself has not been an option, but going in while they are distracted with the Subraith soldiers, I will likely go unnoticed and be able to look around for more clues towards those behind the Q-Serax. We all looked at each other. It was dangerous, but we were all headed into it too. It wasn't really our place to try and talk her out of it. Toshiko said, "Do you want a Subraith gauntlet to help protect you in case you need it? They're not exactly built for three-fingered hands, but you could probably still fit in one." Faye smiled warmly. "That is very kind of you to offer, Toshiko, but I feel that would be inviting a threat to befall me. Besides, I have my telekinesis and hikospheres. Those should be plenty to keep me safe if I need them." A pause held in the air. I don't know if it was because of how great things were going with Toshiko, or how well training was going, or the fact that we were getting closer to figuring out who was behind the Q-Serax, but more than being anxious, I was excited about the next day. It felt like we were truly set on a path to save the world. A year ago, the closest I could have gotten to that was in a video game, while complaining to my friends about how our real lives sucked. I had a really good feeling about that coming mission. I just hoped that on it, there wouldn't be as many new, unexpected threats as the last time we faced the Q-Serax. You know, as much as I love action scenes, I kind of like writing dialogue scenes better, and this was a dialogue-heavy episode, so I really enjoyed it. But of course, it is setting up a pretty action-heavy episode next. Anyway, besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote I've probably used in an endnote before, but I heard it again this week and I really like it. It's by a guy named Peter Crone, and he says that life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal within you where you are not free. Essentially to say that when people or events come up in your life that triggers a very strong negative response from you, it's helpful to then focus on why that person or event is hurting you so much. What deep wound or trauma from your past might it be awakening that's making it seem like that thing is the thing in the present that's hurting you, when really it's just bringing up something that's subconsciously buried within you. And then if you're able to feel those old repressed feelings fully and release them and heal from them, then those people and events won't affect you as negatively in the future. I hope that's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.